Thank you for the warm welcome. Thank you, Remy, for the lovely introduction. And honestly, the pleasure is all mine to be here today. Really pleased to be here doing this talk. And this is actually the third time this year that I have the opportunity to close a conference. And I've got to say, nothing beats being the person standing between you and that drink at the after party. So, no pressure. But on a serious note, I am really pleased to be here and I'm excited about having this opportunity to speak at the end of the conference. We've had a really, really good day. I feel so inspired and I want to tell you a little bit about this session. So we've heard some wonderful talks, we've heard some great diverse voices today, but what I'd like to do is just ask you to cast your mind back to the start of the conference. So if you remember at the start, Remy talked about an idea of us being in this room together and it representing hope. Hope for the future of our industry, perhaps even our world. I'm hoping that my talk can link to this idea and build upon it. This talk is going to ask you to look inwards, journey inwards. But I want to be clear. I'm not giving this talk in a vacuum. If we journey inwards, we will be examining topics like empathy. However, when I look around the world at the moment with everything that's happening, words like empathy feel very hollow. Therefore, my talk doesn't ignore this reality. Instead, in many ways, my talk is a response to this reality. And reality is where we begin. The mystery of life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience. Mystery compels us to find answers. But I do wonder, have we chosen to neglect the greatest mystery of all? So let me ask you, how well do you know yourself? What is your purpose? What's driving you from one moment to the next in your life, in your work? Have we simply made our lives a series of puzzles and obstacles to overcome? Are we so busy doing things that we don't have the time to stop and think and understand why we're even doing them in the first place? This morning we heard Andy talk about the idea of slowing down. So that is the question. Are you slowing down enough? I'd like you to keep that question in mind as we go through this session. Now, I've started by asking you a lot of questions, personal questions. It's only fair that I tell you a little bit about myself. So let me start with a rather bizarre moment from my childhood. Bizarre, but perhaps pivotal. This moment centered around a baseball cap, not too different to the baseball cap that I'm wearing today. This baseball cap belonged to somebody else. Held a lot of value in that person's mind. And I was accused of flushing said baseball cap down a school toilet. Now, for the record, I didn't do it. Honestly, I'm not just saying that, I didn't do it. But I remember this moment like it happened yesterday. I had to sit in the school hall on my own for the best part of a month, every break time, every lunchtime. Just me and my thoughts. And I remember sitting there thinking, how do I fix this? How do I make this better? I remember my parents telling me, maybe I can't fix this. Maybe I can't make it better. But perhaps I can come to terms with the experience. And I believe this idea of coming to terms with an experience compelled me to fall in love with art. Art is all about the journey inwards. It's about looking inside ourselves, examining our world, which often is in turmoil, despite the fact that we turn up every single day to work, to live our lives, and smile through everything. This piece of art that you can see on screen at the moment is by Frank Auerbach. It's a reflection of the struggle that the artist experienced after World War II. The struggle that the entire world experienced. As a child, when I experienced struggle, my parents would give me advice. Like most good children, I ignored most of that advice. Sometimes I didn't understand the advice, but there's one piece of advice that has stuck with me. And it's this piece of advice that inspired me to be here today, to give this talk in the first place. Having more time doesn't mean you should do more. These are the words that my dad would often say to me. And I never fully understood these words until after he died. Because that was when I paused. That was when I stopped and started to think about these words. By then I realized that I'd actually run out of time with my dad. And that is the reality. Time is always working against us. We're consistently chasing time, trying to fill the day with more things to do. We get to the end of the day and we have a huge list of things that we never managed to do. So they roll over into the next day. And time is always working against us. If we're going through a terrible moment in life, time seems to slow down. If we're enjoying life, time seems to speed up. We're constantly in this battle with time throughout our lives. We're not helped by work, are we? I mean, some of you may be familiar with this site. This is a calendar with meetings. Most of us go to meetings and most of us will go to a lot of meetings. Now, I'll be honest, this is not my calendar. Mine looks a lot worse, by the way. But when do we get that time to think? When we're just jumping from one meeting to the next, switching context. We look at our roadmaps, the products that we're designing and building, releasing to make this world a better place. And yet there's no time to breathe. It's one release after the next. No time to pause and think and understand. Just keep releasing the next thing. And then we have these devices in our pockets, constantly demanding our attention to do more. We have these devices on our wrists now. Everywhere we go, these devices travel with us and they demand attention from us, asking us to do more things. According to Apple, this is the future of cars, although I would argue this is the present state of cars, where actually the purpose of a car is to get from A to B safely. In reality, we now spend most of our time fiddling with touchscreens where you can't really get them to work properly and you're not really concentrating on the road. But again, driving a car is suddenly you doing more now, being followed by those devices. When I think of all of these things, I start to make sense of my dad's words. We've become distracted, too busy trying to do more instead of understanding why we're doing those things in the first place. Too busy to truly experience our reality. And human biology is working against us, by the way. So this is some research that shows as we get older, it becomes harder for us to bring about change in our lives. Which is pretty logical, isn't it? As we get older, we build up habits, we rely on those habits. It's easy to repeat those habits, therefore we don't introduce change into our lives. And this is my present reality. This dashed line that you can see on this graph is me. This is the reality for all of us. Let's just think about design and tech for a moment. I'm sure you'll agree there's a lot of pressure to keep learning. There's new tools arriving almost every single day. AI is consistently and constantly changing things. There's new frameworks, new ways of thinking, new ways of working. That pressure exists for us to keep learning, to keep growing. But what if we got it wrong? What if, in pursuit of this knowledge, we neglected one of the most important sources of knowledge? Aristotle said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Let me explain. Can anybody tell me what this is on screen? Empathy map, thank you. Yes, it's an empathy map. Designers, product managers, developers, anybody will use an empathy map to help themselves practice empathy for the end user, trying to imagine what the end user thinks and feels. But if we can't practice empathy for ourselves, how are we going to practice empathy for other people? The first step to empathy is self-empathy. We need to understand ourselves better so that we can understand others better. And this is where reflection can help. Reflection, like art, is about looking inwards. Reflection is about slowing down. It's not about doing more, it's actually about doing less and having more time to understand things. Ultimately, reflection is about learning through experience. I'd like you to imagine reflection as a cycle. So we have an experience in our life, we reflect upon it, and we learn from that experience, and we take those learnings and apply them into the next iteration of that experience, be it similar, same, or completely different. Now, there's a reason why I've drawn this diagram anti-clockwise. Reflection begins by looking back. We need to be able to look back to understand the past so that we can truly shape the future. Now, there's a boatload of research on reflection that shows why reflection should be important to our industry, to everybody. This particular research highlights, through some experiments that were done with a group of people completing a series of tasks, the people that actually took the time to reflect at the end of the day were more productive, happier, and they were less burnt out. Just 15 minutes at the end of the day. That's all. You don't need to look at research to understand the value of reflection, though. Look around at people that have excelled in their fields and their disciplines. People who either at present or in the past have been at the very peak of their work. And you will see a pattern of recognition that actually I don't need to do too much. I need to do less. We live in a society where we're almost taught, it's in our DNA, that to succeed, to have more money, to have more things, to have the success that we crave, the recognition, we need to do more. But the people that are truly successful and feeling fulfilled are the ones that do less. And the reason is because they're intentional with what they do. They understand where they need to put their energy. So what are we looking for? When we reflect, what is it that we're seeking? It's meaning. We heard Amy talk about meaning earlier this afternoon, looking for meaning in work, in life. We're all looking for meaning. That's why we're here today, to create meaningful work, to create meaningful change. And meaning comes from feelings. Feelings are neglected by our society. They're seen as a sign of weakness, when in reality they are a sign of courage. Sometimes it's easy to forget what someone says, but rare is it that we forget how someone makes us feel. And that's why feelings are so important to the practice of reflection. We have Professor Gibbs to thank for this reality around feelings. Back in the 80s, there were a bunch of people looking at the idea of reflection and reflective practice. And it was Professor Gibbs who recognized the value of feelings in this practice. He was the only one that included it in his particular model and approach to reflective practice. When I work with teams at Co-op, one of the things that I try to make sure of is to give the teams the time and space to think about how they feel. We don't just do simple retros thinking about what went well and what didn't go so well. This is a photograph you can see of a workshop that I did earlier this year, and we actually spent a lot of time thinking about feelings that everyone in the team had around the past quarter, and how those feelings changed over the quarter, and how those feelings are different across different people. And I can't tell you the value of doing an exercise such as this, for people to pause for a moment and to think about how they feel and how that impacts their work and everything else. So where do you start? How do you begin with reflection? Well, the first thing you have to understand is that reflection is a form of art. Reflection is a form of art. Art demands from us that we have a curious mindset, that we're seeking answers. We heard Mike this afternoon talk about the idea of curiosity and seeking answers and not accepting the norm. That's what art demands from us. It demands that we have the time to think and understand. It demands that we create the space for ourselves to do that. Art also demands that we use our imagination. And it's these elements that we need to practice reflection. So let's dig into these. Solitude. Again, A practice perhaps neglected by modern society, that time alone, just you and your thoughts. If we don't slow down, how can we possibly understand our lives better, our impact, the reason why we're doing things or not doing things? And it's solitude that can help us slow down. When we're alone with nothing but our thoughts. Imagine your thoughts being leaves falling from a tree. Leaves will fall and land where they need to. And your thoughts are no different. You need to create the space for your thoughts and feelings to land where they need to land and where they belong. A practical way that you can achieve this is by just spending 15 minutes a day of alone time. Just you and your thoughts. No distractions. No phones, no devices, no smartwatches. Put them somewhere else. And when you manage to create this space, your next step is to develop curiosity. Now, when we normally think about an experience we've had, maybe something not so great happened at work that didn't make us feel good or we didn't enjoy, we tend to think about actions and behaviors. We think of actions that other people took, the way they behaved. Sometimes we even do that for ourselves. We think about the actions we took and the way we behaved. However, in reflection, we need to dig deeper. Actions and behaviors are just the surface. We need to go much deeper. We need to dig through the layers. We need to understand what's driving someone, what's the motivation behind someone doing something. And we want to get into the belief system, the purpose that is driving a person's action and behavior, be that yours or somebody else's. And it's by digging through these layers that we start to find meaning in our experiences. Earlier we heard Amy talk about the idea of journaling. If you cast your mind back to that talk, Amy was referring to the idea of trying to understand herself through journaling. And journaling is a great way for you to develop curiosity. A practical thing that can help you through journaling for reflective practice is to simply ask yourself questions. Things you've experienced, why you thought a certain thing, what made you feel this way. And when you start journaling, that's when you start to lean into your imagination. We want to observe our thoughts and feelings objectively, almost as if they're separate entities from ourselves. We want to assess them, critique them, review them, and then start to imagine how those thoughts and feelings could perhaps be different in the future. And this is how we start to learn, through experience. A simple way for you to practice this is to go back to your journal. And often I hear people, writing journals and reading those journals. But if you want to successfully practice reflection, don't simply read your journal. Go back to it after a few days and revise your notes. You will have no doubt had an experience in the past where a few days later your feelings around that experience change. Your outlook on it, your perspective changes. That's what we're looking for when we imagine. we go back to our thoughts, our feelings, and try and imagine how they might be different. I just want to briefly summarize what I've talked about here. Ultimately, with reflective practice, you need courage. Courage to put something into this process. If you put something into it, you will get something out of it. 15 minutes of thinking time each day will help you slow down, for example. Journaling helps you find meaning. Iteration and revision of that journal will help you learn for the future. Reflection is all about giving something to the process and taking something from it. As a designer, I believe reflection has helped me grow my skills around the craft and my ability to work with other people. And I just want to take a moment to highlight some of the ways in which I think reflection has helped me. Firstly, reflection has helped me improve my self-awareness. This means my impact on people is at the forefront of my mind. As an example, I know my strengths and weaknesses. I know how I can help people, but at the same time, I recognize when I need to lean on other people. I also have a deeper alignment with my core values, which means I'm selective with what I do. I don't say yes to everything. I only say yes to those things that I know align to my deepest values. And through reflection, I feel I can start looking at situations from different perspectives. And this really helps me with design, because when I'm designing something, I often start to imagine someone else using this screen, and I start to imagine what that person might think. It really helps me embrace change and consistently iterating on my work. For instance, this talk. This is the 4th iteration of this talk. And each time I give it, I go back to it and I refine it. And I'm quite confident this won't be the last iteration of this talk. Through reflection, I've fallen in love with the idea of consistently evolving everything and never accepting that it's reached such a peak that it no longer needs work. So what do we risk by not reflecting? What do we risk by not slowing down? Let's go back to the wise words of Frank Herbert. You cannot see the future without seeing the past. Reflection is our only means of slowing down time. Reflection is our only means of breaking that cycle where we just try to do more and instead we start to do less. Reflection is our only means of truly experiencing our reality so that we can understand the past and shape the future. In the design and tech space, our role is to make the world a better place. A simpler, more accessible, more inclusive place for everyone. That's our responsibility. We've heard so many inspiring talks today around accessibility, inclusion. That's the fight that we're in. Although at the moment it might feel like that fight is a difficult one to win, We can't give up on it. Our job is to transform teams, organizations, products, services. If we're fortunate enough, even lives. But this journey doesn't begin with the end user. It begins with you. It begins with me. It begins with all of us. If we can't take the time to understand ourselves, if we can't take the time and find the courage to change who we are, then how can we possibly understand the world better? How can we possibly bring about change in this world? The greatest mystery is not something out there. The greatest mystery of all is inside all of us. And it's reflection that helps us explore that mystery, helps us understand it better. Reflection helps us understand our strengths, our weaknesses, our unique abilities. Reflection gives us clarity of thought. It helps us understand who we are today and who we must become tomorrow. It's through this clarity of thought that we can start making informed decisions about our life, about our work, and start to bring about change. Change inside us, change around us. And change is the reason we're in this room today. The dream of changing things, the pursuit of change is what has brought everyone together in this room today. So let me ask you again. How well do you know yourself? What is your purpose? What is your role going to be in making this world a better place? Our industry, our world demands change from us. Maybe the art of reflection can help you define what that change is. Because change begins with you. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening.